In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. We gather this morning at a time of losing. I thank you all for coming and to joining those who are watching on the live stream. We welcome you as we gather to bid farewell to Hynda Erlich. I thank you for welcoming me into this holy moment. I'm Rabbi Rick Brody, the Baskin Jewish Community Chaplain at Jewish Family Service of Colorado. It's an honor, as it was to meet Hynda about 1.5 years ago, and then spend multiple visits with her and her family in the hospital over the last 2 weeks. To be here today to guide Hynda's mourners and all of us gathered through this ceremony of sacred recollection and joyful remembrance, and to bestow a final act of kindness upon Hynda with a proper burial. Before we hear more about Hynda's qualities, the impact of her relationships and her legacy, I offer this brief biographical sketch, some of the basic facts of Hynda's life. Hynda Erlich was born a survivor into a family of literal survivors of the Holocaust. Given the Hebrew name Hynda Bat Moshe Vesheva, she was born in a displaced persons camp in Berlin on October 21st, 1946, the 26th day of the month of Tishrei in the year 5707 on the Hebrew calendar. She was the second child of Sonia and Morris Erlich, who had recently relocated from Russia with their son Isaac, who was 4 years older than Hynda. When Hynda was 5, the family came to New York, where Hynda spent the overwhelming majority of her life, up until the last couple of years, when she moved to Colorado to be closer to family. She died peacefully 2 days ago, Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, the 14th of Elul, 5784, at Swedish Medical Center in Englewood, Colorado, where she spent the last 2 weeks of her life following a major stroke from which she was unable to recover. Hynda's childhood was spent in the Bronx, in a home where Yiddish was the primary language. The family also spoke German, Russian, Hebrew, and English. Hynda's parents were passionate about the centrality of family, about their Jewish identity and Jewish culture, values, and history, especially the legacy of the Holocaust and the imperative to never forget. Hynda internalized all these priorities. Her parents were also fiercely committed, after having lost everything in Europe, to rebuilding a successful life for themselves in America, which they did. Hynda received a bachelor's degree in English from Emerson College in Boston, and then a master's degree in education. In her late 20s, she made Aliyah, obtaining Israeli citizenship and living in Jerusalem for 7 years. Upon returning to New York in her 30s, she settled in Manhattan, living most of her Manhattan life as an adult on the Upper East Side, and began her career as a high school English teacher, teaching at Christopher Columbus High School in the Bronx. It was there that she met fellow teacher Marilyn Millicher. Marilyn and her husband Alan became lifelong friends. Hynda also became a speech therapist, work that she did on the side in addition to her teaching job, helping children with stutters and speech impediments. The larger family also got involved in real estate, which became another side venture for Hynda. Hynda was married twice. Neither marriage lasted very long, but it was in her second marriage that Hynda became a mother to her daughter, Molly. Hynda was very focused on being a mother and attending to Molly's upbringing as her top priority. She was a member of Park East Synagogue in Manhattan, where she sent Molly to Hebrew school for multiple hours of instruction every Tuesday and Thursday throughout Molly's childhood, up until Molly became a bat mitzvah. Hynda retired from teaching in her 60s and spent about another decade in Manhattan. When she came to Colorado, she enjoyed the opportunity to spend much time with her beloved grandchildren, a definite highlight of the last couple of years of her life. Hynda is survived by her daughter, Molly Hakes, Molly's husband, Craig Hakes, and their children, Hynda's 2 grandchildren, Hunter Hakes and Caden Hakes. We also acknowledge Deborah Aaron, Hynda's sister-in-law and best friend, whom we'll hear from later in this ceremony. Deborah's husband, Reed Moskowitz, is back in New York. Deborah is joined today by her and Reed's children, Marissa and Craig Moskowitz. We welcome Jordana Erlich Levine, Hynda's niece, who will also share words with us today. Jordana's husband, Stan Levine, is in New York with their 2 sons, Zachary and Jacob. Jordana is joined here by her and Stan's daughter, Aiden. We note dear friends Marilyn and Alan Millicher, mentioned earlier, who are back in New York watching the live stream. And we welcome all the loving, close family in both Israel and Brazil, who are also watching right now. All of us gathered today and participating virtually are here to support Molly, Hynda's one official mourner, and her family, as they fulfill the mitzvah, the sacred obligation to provide a dignified burial for their mother and grandmother, returning Hynda's body to the earth from which we all come, in what is considered in Jewish tradition to be an act of chesed shel emet, a kindness of pure truth that cannot be repaid by the deceased, and is thus performed with complete selflessness and love. So we recognize and thank everyone for being a part of this gathering to pay tribute to Hynda's life and to support her mourners at this difficult time. Each of us plays a sacred role in the mitzvah of kavod hamet, the honoring of the deceased, which we will fulfill by speaking kindly about Hynda's life, her joys, her passions, her virtues, and her character, her accomplishments, and her love for her family, and expressing gratitude for her presence on this earth for the past almost 78 years. We do this with appreciation for the memories Hynda crafted for us, with relief knowing that she died peacefully and free of suffering, surrounded by love, and with sadness that her journey among the living and her ability to fashion new memories in the present and into the future has come to its end, yet knowing that her legacy will endure in so many ways, and that her memory will be a blessing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We continue our service with the recitation of some psalms, thus linking Hynda's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. From Psalm 15. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai mi yagor ba'olecha, mishkon b'har kodshecha. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Olech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere the Eternal One. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakach, oseh ele lo yimot leolam. From Psalm 34. L'chu vanim shimuli, yirat Adonai alamedchem. Come, my children, and listen carefully. You will learn what it means to revere the Eternal One. Who is eager for life? Who desires years of good fortune? Guard your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech. Shun evil and do good. Seek amity and pursue it. Sur merav yaseh tov, bakesh shalom v'rodfehu. The 23rd Psalm. If you know the English, I invite you to join with me. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsa. Bihinot deshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begates al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan ta'aroch lefanai shulchan ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorerai di shanta vashemen roshi di shanta vashemen roshi di shanta vashemen roshi kosi rivaya ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai ושבתי בבית אדוני ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים ידדי די 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 ידדי די 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 ידדי די 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 ידדי די 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 We now have the opportunity to hear from those who were closest to Hynda. We'll be calling up Deborah Aaron, Jordan Erlich, and then Craig Higgs and Molly Higgs. Deborah?
I first met Hynda about 48 years ago. I moved into her building on her floor with my mom helping me. And before I actually met Hynda, because I was downstairs with the moving van, Hynda met my mom, debriefed my mom on everything about our family, me, everything. She knew more about me than I could learn about her in years. But that was Hynda. She just had this wonderful ability and energy to talk and delve, and everything about her was about people. People were her great love. And she always made a point to speak with neighbors, people in the restaurants, fellow travelers. If we went on a cruise, she would talk to everyone on the cruise, and she would know everything, and she would learn everything about them. This was who she is, a real people person. And she gained so much of her energy from being around people. Little did I know that about 8 years later, from meeting her, she would become my sister-in-law. So at my wedding to my husband, Reed, father to my children, Hynda met Reed's brother and Molly's father. And that was fireworks from the beginning. And everything after that was about family for all of us. Molly, Marissa, Craig, they all grew up together. We lived 40 blocks away from each other. We went on vacations. We went to Bellport for the weekends. We did so many things together. And just being at home with each other was fine because we enjoyed each other and our children and seeing them grow up. And Hynda loved all of that. It's a little hard to read my notes here. One of my most amazing trips with Hynda, alone, not with our children, was when I went to Berlin with her to find the DP camp where she was born and the hospital to which her mother had been taken. And it was quite a trip, very emotional for both of us. We did indeed find the place, although Hynda's mom said, no, that can't be it. It doesn't look like it. It was the only DP camp in that particular town. And how did we find it? Because what did we do when we got off the train? It's about 20 minutes outside of Main Berlin. What did we do? We went shopping. And there, Hynda met people who could tell us where the DP camp had been. Someone who took us there, brought us there. This is Hynda. Making connections, always being connected to people. And always, she had so much energy to go and do, and the world, and to see the world and people. She was also a fashionata. Everything she did was with style, and she often criticized me and what I wore, but also she would tell me when she liked it as well. She was very honest, very out there. Nothing could stop her. No one could tell her not to tell somebody something. That was Hynda. My daughter, when she was young, loved to imitate Hynda with her pocketbook on her arm, a hat on her head, hand on her hip. So you see an 8-year-old imitating her aunt, and Hynda loved it, loved every minute of it. She was also very good friends to my husband. In fact, many people thought Hynda and my husband were brother-sister instead of the two brothers, my husband and his brother, because they were that close to each other. They had heart-to-heart conversations, they chatted about people, and there was a real love between them, a real respect for who they are and what they could see and envision in each other. And I loved that about her. And it's very hard to see what I wrote here. I guess in conclusion, we had so many wonderful times together. I will never, ever forget these times, nor will my family. And well, memories are gone. Our future memories are not there. Our memories are so deep. Hynda, rest in peace, my dear friend and sister.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Learned a lot there. Thank you. Jordana?
I just want to point out that I wore heels today, and I know that Hynda would be fine with that. I did it for her because even though it's a little hard to walk, it's always about how you look. It doesn't matter if it's challenging or difficult. It's all about presentation. So probably suffice to say, I've known Hynda the longest out of everybody here because she's my aunt. I'm 52, so there goes that. My memories go back. It was far, obviously, and I have a really good memory, and I have times to remember from when I was even 2 and 3 with my aunt. But I'll start with this. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? And if I'm only for myself, what am I? Hillel's statement, it's Rabbi Hillel, so aptly reflects the way Hynda lived life. Growing up in a family that was displaced after surviving the Holocaust and losing so much of their family was certainly not easy, and it was fraught with emotion. Straddled between two worlds, that of the old country and a new life in New York, the Bronx to be precise, was a mix of sadness, possibilities, and questions. As a child, I'm sure it was confusing and hard for her, and my dad, of course. Through this, she persevered, and Hynda made life an adventure. She traveled. She was the first person in our family to go away to college. That was something our grandparents did not understand. Who goes away to college? Who even goes to college? Our grandmother didn't even go further than I think she was 8 or 9 years old when she had to stop school in Poland. So this was all new. She moved to Israel for a time to an apartment in Jerusalem overlooking the Kotel. There wasn't a clothing store or jewelry store that Hynda met and didn't like. She never sat still. She would get in the car and just go. Hynda lived life. I remember when I was maybe 4 or 5, I'd sleep at her apartment in the city on many occasions. And I remember thinking she's the coolest person, and boy, was she extravagant. And maybe this is too much to share, but I remember waking up one morning or in the mornings, because I slept there often, and she would go and walk her dog with just her fur coat on. Could you imagine? I'm sorry to have to share that, but she would stop and talk to anyone, anywhere. And if you were with her at a restaurant, she was the kind of person that could walk in knowing no one and walk out with 10 new best friends. There was also an edginess to my aunt as well. I think I was maybe 7. She asked me if I wanted to drive the car. Who does that? Hynda, because without losing a beat, there I was. She put me on her lap and off we went. And I think I was on the FDR drive, by the way. For those of you that know New York, you do not do that with a 7-year-old child. But there we went. And Hynda liked things just so. When I was a teen, she told me, it's time to get your eyebrows waxed. And off we went to the salon. And then I remember I needed a pocketbook. I was really little at that time, but I have to tell you, this pocketbook, as strange as it seems, it's just a possession, but it's so central to me reflecting on my childhood. I could picture this to this day, and I really wish I still had it. It was this off-white little purse. It was crossbody. It zipped just shut so, and I remember putting all of my secret little notes and possessions into this pocketbook, and it was really central to my childhood. I won't pretend she was always easy, and we did have our challenges. And yet we have a shared history and a lifetime of memories. And it's been an honor and a blessing to watch her love on Molly and her family and continue the legacy that our grandparents left us, including the importance of family, connection, and support for one another, no matter what. May her memory be for a blessing, and may her soul rest and find itself with our grandma, grandpa, and my dad.
Thank you, Jordana. It's beautiful. And here from Hynda's son-in-law, Craig Hicks.
So, same things to say.
Sorry if this comes off a little choppy. This one wasn't expected. And it went really quick. I feel as though everyone knew Hynda, but only a few generally knew who she was. To say she was an interesting person is an understatement of the century. As many of you here today can say, she was passionate, driven, intelligent, straightforward, and theatrical. That was the thespian in her. When she put her mind to something, her determination and fortitude surpassed anyone I know. This inherent focus carried her through many challenges she faced as a youth and into adulthood. When I met her, she was already self-made and had nothing to prove. She had a tough shell and a soft soul, if you were fortunate to be within her inner circle. You knew she had character on her hands, and she was a pain in the ass at times too. Some of you know that without her, I wouldn't be where I am here today. She was always willing to offer a lending hand, but you had better back it up and in a major way. The strong-willed and focused wife I married was a passion project she adored and loved. So when I married Molly, Hynda was lockstep behind her. She will always be remembered and adored by her granddaughter Hunter, who she loved to go shopping with and get pampered with over at mani-pedi or at the salon. Her grandson Caden will always remember her by learning to read, write, and participate in his action hero affairs. It was only 2 days ago that I had learned from her friend that she'd actually liked me and not simply tolerated me. That made me really proud to hear, because she was one of the biggest critics, and in hindsight, which is also the biggest reason she will be greatly missed. I love my mother-in-law. More than she knew. And I wish I had expressed that to her more when I was with her. I even still have saved on my phone several voicemails from her that only said, "Craig, do you know where Molly is? Please call her." I knew she didn't want to talk to me. She'll always be remembered, because who could ever forget Hynda Erlich? I love you. Oh, shit. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate every one of you taking time out of your day to come visit and pay respect.
Thank you, Craig. I hear from Hynda's daughter, Molly.
Yeah. We're here to honor my mother, and I want to thank you all just for being here. It means so much to me, from the depths of my soul, that my mother had loved ones to be here. And I have so many people, or I should probably say in front of it, to support me and my family in this time of need, so thank you. Anyone who met my mother, even for a brief moment, knew she was a strong force. She was beautiful, smart, funny, and very powerful. Her presence was one that everyone remembered even after meeting her for a brief moment. Not all memories may have been the most positive, but they sure were memorable. She was filled with 100% emotion. She may have disliked things with a passion, but she sure did love with an unparalleled passion. I was lucky enough to receive all of it. Everything she did in her adult life after I was born was for me. I was her main priority and her passion in her adult life. I don't say this to be boastful. I say this as an homage to the dedication she had for me and for her family. After me, Hunter and Caden were the lights of her life. Every moment they had together is a gift that'll be cherished for the rest of our days. I believe a lot of my mother's raw passion and emotion came from, like a lot of people said, from being a Holocaust survivor. Life was not easy. She came to the US at the age of 5 after we talked about being in a displaced persons camp in Germany, and my grandparents were lucky to have survived and fled with my mother and my uncle to the US. Our family is split between the US, Brazil, and Israel. Decades later, over 3 continents, our family still plays a part in each other's lives. And my mother loved her cousins overseas and was lucky enough to spend time with all of them throughout her life. Now, briefly, who she was. She loved crime shows. I'm pretty sure Law and Order was the background music to our house all the time. Growing up, I would fall asleep in bed with her to Walker, Texas Ranger, or Murder, She Wrote. She played piano. She could only handle 1 glass of wine and maybe one full Bloody Mary. She was a passionate teacher and educator. While I was the light of her life, she was the light of mine. Despite feuds and fights, we were each other's constants. She always told me that it was me and her against the world. And I'm so sad she's not here to battle the thing we call life with me anymore. She taught me well. Losing my uncle and grandmother not that long ago, I create my own actions in life now to make sure I make them proud. Now I will move forward in life to make them proud, and I'll work even harder to make my mother proud too. She was amazing. Myself, my husband, my children, and the world lost a strong, willful, honest, and loving soul, and she'll be forever missed. I'll end it with thank you all for coming. I appreciate each and every one of you. And please hug your people tight tonight. Make amends where it needs to be mended. Just love one another because life can be taken so quickly. Everything I have.
Thank you so much, Molly. Everyone spoke. I've learned some rich details about Hynda's life, her challenges, her perseverance, her interests, her passions, her character. Without a doubt, a character, a unique individual. We learned that Hynda loved shopping, and Molly shared with me in particular, we heard a little from Jordana about a special handbag. Hynda collected handbags, and even more, her material love was shoes, which Jordana also made reference to in terms of coming in heels and how important it is to look good. It's important to feel good as well. I get the sense that Hynda did prioritize the appearance of shoes. She had shoes in representative form as well. The image of shoes, figurines of shoes that she collected, and pictures of shoes. It was her material passion. I was thinking about the aspect of comfortable footwear. We learned that Hynda loved Law and Order. I don't know if she had any interest in shears, but she did spend 4 years of her college time in Boston, so maybe there was a soft spot in her heart for that show. In the final episode, the main characters are sitting around and someone asks about, what's the true meaning of life? And Cliff Clavin says, comfortable footwear. It's a Jewish idea, believe it or not. When I was with Hynda, as we knew that her death was approaching, I was with her on Sunday evening. And I explained to her with faith that she was hearing, and to her family that was present, that when one is approaching death, our tradition says to treat that moment as a miniature Yom Kippur, a day of atonement, so that one can die with a clean slate, being at one with themselves, with God, with the world. On Yom Kippur, we remind ourselves about the importance of comfortable footwear, because one of the commandments about how we fast and abstain from worldly pleasures is to not wear leather shoes. The idea being that long ago, any footwear that wasn't leather was likely to not provide the same kind of support or comfort, and one would feel the harsh ground underneath much more likely and be a little more in touch with human vulnerability and discomfort on that day in which we withdraw from life. The idea is all the other days of the year, barring any other extreme circumstances, our tradition urges us to be fully invested in life, in its material goodness and its pleasures, including feeling good about what's on our feet, the comfort and the appearance. So even as we were in Hynda's final moments, and we connected with the spirit of a day that is about being closer to death and withdrawn from life and its pleasures, there was inherently a reminder about the importance of enjoying those things in life. And it did. There's more to footwear in our tradition. In the Torah, we are taken through the journey. The narrative, most of the 5 books of Moses, is the narrative of our ancestors fleeing a horrific experience. They were survivors, and they went into a wilderness, a land of transition, a land of unknown, a lack of certainty. There was a destination of the promised land, but the people needed to endure 40 years of wandering. And the Torah says that God miraculously cared for them, both in terms of providing them food on a daily basis, manna from heaven. They didn't have to cook anything. Hynda very rarely, if ever, cooked anything. She ate out all the time. She was very in touch with this aspect of our spiritual history, this part of our tradition, fleeing horrific circumstances, moving to someplace new. That was the family story as survivors. And also finding ways not to cook. And the Torah tells us, in those 40 years, it's actually, Moses tells the people, your shoes never wore out. You've been walking for 40 years. And part of the miracle of divine care is that your shoes never wore out. You still have what I guess were, good quality shoes. They're not ragged, they're not falling apart. The Torah cared about communicating to us the importance of shoes. Hynda cared about the importance of shoes. I'd like to believe that Hynda also experienced, in whatever way she understood it, that sense of grace and benevolence and care from the divine source of love. She surely, as we have heard, cherished love, lived with it, transmitted it, felt it. And these are the ripples of some core ideas from our tradition. Being cared for along our journey, enjoying those material items while surviving, and holding on to that firm belief and understanding of what truly matters. Family, people, upright ethics. Molly shared with me about how firmly Hynda impressed upon her the importance of living with honesty and integrity. That's the Jewish way to live in the world. It's the moral, human way. And Hynda embodied it. Molly mentioned that her grandmother, Hynda's mother, would sing to Molly the song Que Sera Sera. It too has some wisdom that I think speaks to some of the essence of the life that Hynda led. When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? We've learned that these were things that mattered to Hynda. Here's what she said to me, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future is not ours to see. Que sera, sera, what will be, will be. When I grew up and fell in love, I asked my sweetheart what lies ahead. Will we have rainbows day after day? Here's what my sweetheart said, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera, what will be, will be. Now I have children of my own. They ask their mother, what will I be? Will I be handsome? Will I be rich? I tell them tenderly, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera, what will be, will be. Que sera, sera. In Pirkei Avot, the same collection of wisdom sayings of our ancestors from which we get the teaching that Jordana shared from Hillel. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? We also learn the future is seen, but agency is granted. The idea being God knows the whole picture. And there is something that is said, but it lives in dynamic partnership with the fact that we are given free will. We are empowered to live our lives with agency, with our own volition. That's the dance of living in this world. There might be things that will be. What will be, will be. There might be things we cannot control. And yet, we have that empowerment to steer as partners with the divine, moving on that journey, whether it's through the wilderness, fleeing oppression, or through any of the other trials of life and its joys. On one hand, what will be, will be. We accept what is. And on the other, we rise to the occasion to make the most of life. We take heart, knowing that Hynda lived in that balance. She knew what will be, will be. There are things beyond anyone's control. And she knew that it's important to live life with purpose, with intention, with love, with individuality. Molly shared that can sum up so much of Hynda that she marched to the beat of her own drum, as one should. That she lived well. And that her having lived leaves a blessing behind in this world. And that her memory will be a blessing. We now make our transition to the lowering of the casket. Hynda had always wanted to be buried in Israel after the years she spent there and her love for the Holy Land, the Promised Land, the land on the other end of the journey. We're burying her here in Colorado. We will be including some soil from the land of Israel as a way to fulfill her wish, even on the other side of the world. As we return Hynda's body to the earth from which we all come. Al Mekomah Tavo v'Shalom. May Hynda go unto God in peace. Tzor Tamim, the perfect rock, whose work we perceive, reveals a faithful God, true, upright, and honest. The rock is perfect in every way. Dare we ask God to account for any deed? Hashalit b'mata uvma'al, God rules below and on high, causing death, giving life. Morid sha'ol v'ya'al, bringing down to the grave, but raising up as well. Hatzor Tamim, the rock is inscrutable. Dare we question ma ta'aseh, what have you done, when God's every word comes to be immediately? Hatzor Tamim, the rock, is unfathomable, but just and patient and malei rachamim, filled with compassion. God, have pity for parents and children. Ki lecha adon haslichot v'harachamim, as forgiveness and compassion are yours. You are just, Eternal One, in the giving and in the taking. In your hand is pikdon kol ruchot, the essence of all spirit. You would never permit the impact we made to fade. So consider us keenly. Ki lecha adon harachamim v'haslichot, for you are the master of compassion and forgiveness. Adam im ben shana yihiyeh, we're immortal to live but a single year or even 1,000. Kalo haya yihiyeh, it would not seem enough. Baruch dayan ha'emet, we therefore praise the judge of truth, who takes but who also gives life. We know, Eternal One, that your discretion is beyond us. We know, Eternal, that your word is good, but your judgments at times puzzle us. And though we may brood over harsh realities, Tzadikata, we place our trust in your righteousness and accept our lot, our loss, and the love that remains with us forever. Nachem al pletat tzon yadecha, have mercy upon us and strengthen us to maintain our courage at this time of sorrow. Adonai Natan, the Eternal has given, Adonai Lakach, and the Eternal has taken. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach, may the name of the Eternal be blessed. We now have the opportunity to bestow that final act of kindness, literally upon Hynda, by placing earth, the nutritive source of all life, on top of her casket, over her, enveloping her in what I like to think of as the warm blanket of earth, as we tuck in our loved one for her eternal rest. This is an act of love and kindness. We do it with mixed emotions, and so each one of us who wishes to fulfill this act, starting with the mourners, does so in a ritual way that distinguishes this use of a shovel from the ordinary use of a shovel. We start by holding it in its upside down position, with the shovel side facing down, convex side facing up. This both signifies that we're doing something a little different, and it also requires us to lift that first bit of earth onto the shovel and carry it with a little caution and care in order to make sure that we balance it. And that signifies the fact that while on the one hand we're doing an act of kindness, we're doing it with mixed emotions, and so we engage with a little hesitation. After one has offered a little bit of earth in that ritualized manner, we turn the shovel back into its normal position, and we take 2 more scoops, dropping each one upon the casket, and then each person returns the shovel to the heap of earth so that the next person engages in the entire act from beginning to end, picking it up from the pile, doing the 3 offerings of earth, and then returning it to the pile. We'll start with Molly and her immediate family coming forward. Shovel. Well, sprinkling some soil from the land of Israel with kindness onto Hynda's castle.
Yeah.
We will now invite up family. Come forward. And if multiple people at the same time can each take a different shovel, find a different spot around the grave to partake in this same act of kindness. We'll move things along a little faster clip. All others gather who wish to bestow this last act of kindness upon Hynda and help us complete the burial. We invite you all to come forward to do 3 offerings of earth as you have seen done. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Yada rai 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 rai. Yada rai 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 rai. Yai rai 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 rai. Anyone wants to help with the more practical aspect, which is still an important part of what we need to do, which is to completely cover the casket. So let's grab the shovel. Vigorous shovel. Yada dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai. Yada dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai dai dai. If anyone wishes, after the ceremony is complete, to be with the crew when they will help fill the plot completely, you're welcome to do so. We'll save the rest of that for later. We have completely covered the casket. I invite you to take a seat for a moment. We have tended to Hynda's body with this final act of kindness. V'yashov ha'afar al ha'aretz k'shehaya, v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netanah. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Hynda's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, eternal one, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. And let us say Amen. The idea of returning the earth to the dust, to the body to the dust of the earth, and the return of the soul to the eternity of the divine leads us to our next prayer, which acknowledges we've done what we needed to with Hynda's body, and we now offer a prayer for her eternal soul, that it may have eternal rest. This is the El Malay Rachamim prayer. I invite you, if you are able, to rise. El Malay Rachamim Shochen Bamromi Hamtze Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim כזוהר הרקיע מזהירי את נשמת הינדה בת מוישה ושבע שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר אמן. El Malay Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Hynda Erlich, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our beloved Hynda find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say Amen. You may be seated. We now make yet another transition, acknowledging that we have done what we have needed to do for Hynda, in body and soul, to give her a sacred, kind farewell. We now turn our attention to her mourner, Molly, to Molly's family, because it is now that they're having completed their obligation to Hynda. It is now that they truly become mourners, and the journey of mourning begins. It's a journey that starts with their simply standing in place as their first step, simply rising, as I will ask them and all of us to do in a moment, for the mourner's Kaddish. This ancient Aramaic incantation that makes no mention of death, but simply praises God as the source of life, the source of all, exalted, full of blessing, the source of peace for us, giving us the opportunity to be grateful for the goodness and the blessings of life, for Hynda's life, and for us to journey back into life through this journey of mourning. It is a crutch, it is a support for mourners who say it, and the tradition requires that they be in a community of others, a critical mass of a community, standing with them as their support. That's what is needed for them to say it, because that's what is needed for them. We all play that role of supportive, loving, comforting community for them as they recite Kaddish Yatom.
They have.
I invite us all to rise. If you know the places for saying Amen and joining in, I invite you to do so with me in those sections, as we otherwise stand in witness of this recitation by Molly and her family.
A little
Card.
way.
Corners. Yit Gadal, v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. V'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute v'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah levarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudisha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran v'yalma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the one who makes peace in the heights make peace for us, for all the people Israel, and for all who dwell on earth. And we say, Amen. May be seated. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru. Amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. I mentioned that standing for Kaddish would be the first step that the mourners would take. In a moment, they're going to take their first forward steps into this period of mourning. As we leave this sacred place and we make our way into other places where the mourners will sit with their grief and receive the comfort and compassion of those who care for them. We begin that entire process with the first steps that they're going to take from here. After I describe what we'll do, I will have all those who are not the immediate